And I'm still getting really bad breath sounds, Rob. All right. We are live on both Facebook and YouTube. Hi, everybody. Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society podcast. I am the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. We are going to be recording episode 565. I need to change that graphic of the Polite Society podcast. Let me go ahead and do that here real quick. All right. I think I'm ready on my end, guys. If we're ready to take a running leap at this. Okay, and check over here. Everything is good. All right. All right, I'm ready to go. We have my staff ready to go. All right, here we are. Recording in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, November the 16th, 2020. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Amy Dillon, and on tonight's show, we talk with former law enforcement officer Jim Cusack about his path to now being a competitive shooter for Team Glock.
I'm Rob Morse, and we'll talk about just how nice Minnesota really is after some cities defund the police.
I'm Dana Lupher, and we'll talk about our first DGU, where our defender protects his tenants. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 565 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right. Well, this is the Polite Society podcast. As we said, it's been exactly a week since we recorded last, and I'm getting used to this recording on Mondays now rather than recording whenever the heck I can get home. Rob, what's been up with you since the last time we've been on the air, bud?
No, I'm still suffering culture shock. It's been a week and we haven't had another hurricane. I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show. I joined our friend Amanda Suffolcool on her Eye on the Target radio show on Sunday. I carried every day. About the only gun news in my neck of the woods, I'm waiting to hear from the state police about my concealed carry renewal. If they work on it long enough, it'll expire, and then I have to go through the reapplication process. Amy, how have you been?
I've been good, just carrying every day, trying to get some training in. I've been doing some research on a couple of articles I'm writing for Shooting Industry magazine. And other than that, just laying low and kind of seeing what's going on in the news, because there's a lot. Dana, what's up with you?
Well, Rob, I think the storms came up here.
I'm sorry.
We're doing storm cleanup right now. Detroit Edison got our power on after just a couple hours, but many around us are still waiting for power to be restored. And of course, I picked yesterday morning to go out and manually pull the slide in on our travel trailer. So I was laying underneath the travel trailer while it was storming out. But I stayed relatively dry. Paul, what have you and Susan been up to?
Well, a lot. I have been really working on my new job. and it's been consuming a great deal of my time. I was able this past weekend, for the first time since starting the new job, to actually take almost a full day off. I had a little bit of work to do Saturday morning. I recorded a daily bullet. I had a little bit of work to do Sunday afternoon, helping Amanda with Eye on the Target Radio, and doing some planning for the week. But for the most part, I got to spend most of the weekend with Susan and just kicking back and relaxing, and that felt so good. The one thing I've been doing with guns is I've been going through a training class with Neil Widener, and active self-protection. And it's a 6-week class. We've got 2 weeks left. And I got to say, it feels really, really good to get tuned up again. I took a year off last year and didn't take any training, and that was a mistake. And I'm really glad now that I'm back to training. And it feels really good to have somebody look at my form and make sure that I'm doing everything right. So that's what's up with me with guns. Let's see, and I think this is all we got for staff on right now. So let's go ahead and let's talk about Self-Defense Radio Network. As the tagline says, all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. If you're watching us live, you look at the webpage there. We're up there, Polite Society Podcast, Riding Shotgun with Charlie, Armed Lutheran Radio, Firearms Chat, of course, Self-Defense Gun Stories by our own Rob Morse. Lots of great shows up there, at least 2 more coming. Those 2 being the Get Off My Lawn podcast and this other show put out by this really, mean bald guy named Lathrop. It's the Armed Society podcast. That happens Wednesday nights, and that'll, as soon as we get 10 shows out, that'll be up on the network as well. So let's see here. I don't have any training I want to promote coming up. Amy, Rob, you got anything you want to be plugging?
Nothing right now.
All right.
Before the snow gets too deep, go out and do some.
Yeah, there you go. I don't think you have to worry about snow, though, Rob, do you?
No, I'm the range I'm headed out to was wiped clear. The berms and the concrete pads that were all that's left. So it's changing literally day to day. Every day is an improvement.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and do this. Just because this is live TV, and folks, this is how the sausage gets made. We're waiting for a guest, and we may be waiting for a while. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump to break. When we come back, we're going to do at least part of a news segment, and then we will, if the guest shows, we will go ahead and go to the guest and maybe split the news up, or maybe we'll figure it out. But for right now, we're going to go to break, and we'll come back with news right after this from the Second Amendment Foundation.
America is under attack, and we need you to take action now. Our history, culture, Constitution, and the American way of life are being assaulted. Violent anarchists are rioting and looting in cities across the country. They are demanding the defunding of our police and an end to law and order. There has never been a more critical time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. The Second Amendment Foundation created the Second Amendment First Responders Program. This program seeks to actively engage Americans who want to protect our Second Amendment rights. Please text PROTECT 2A to 474747 and become a Second Amendment first responder. Now is the time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. Text PROTECT 2A to 474747. Again, text PROTECT 2A to 474747. Now is the time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. Text PROTECT 2A to 474747.
Okay, we are back. This is a Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Let's go ahead and, Rob, I'm going to have you lead this off. I'm going to do a couple things behind the scenes here, but go ahead and I'm going to turn this over to you, Bud. Let's go ahead and do news.
This is an election year. Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it, as the old saying goes, because the consequences could be worse than the initial problem. Remember in the aftermath of the George Floyd death? That's when Minnesota City Council members decided to defund the police, and they wanted to wipe the force out of our city, close quote. In the aftermath of the cuts and the subsequent departures of dozens of officers, the city has seen spikes in every category of crime, including arson and homicides leading the way, 76 and 87% increases, respectively. The Minneapolis police chief has appealed to the same city council to bring in outside law enforcement to address these problems. I guess the only comment that we have to say is, we told you so. Any other comments?
Well, this is something that, we always say that we have to be our own first responders. And especially with the calling for defunding of the police, especially in large metropolitan cities, it just really drives home the point of we have to be our own first responders. And I think that maybe people that weren't necessarily pro-gun before, they're now going out and buying guns for the first time. And we're seeing that surge of new gun owners. And I think it's because of that we told you so moment that they're kind of experiencing because of the, defunding of police. And, in some areas, we've also seen where they're, doing mass layoffs of the police force. And it's just really unfortunate.
Amy, I had a renewal class recently for my concealed carry permit. Exactly. Lots of the people there, all of the women to a person, and almost everyone else said, yeah, I need to protect myself because the police won't be there. Wouldn't that be interesting? Because in so many court cases, we've heard people say, when one side argues for expansion of the right to keep and bear arms, the other side, no, you just call the police. They'll be there. And now they're advocating for defunding the police. Whoops. Who knew? Dana,
even
did you have something you wanted to throw
any
in?
of this. Oh.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Amy. Finish your.
Well, just finish my thought. Even before the calling of defunding the police, maybe you've heard this in some of your training classes too, but I've had some conversations with several law enforcement officers that have straight out said, by the time we show up after we're called, we're the cleanup crew.
Right. Can you imagine how that has to hurt to be a law enforcement officer? I called you. Why weren't you there faster? Because it was over by the time you called, Darn it.
Well, and
hello, Iron Horseman.
The city council, even before they were completing their defunding, was hiring outside security for their own benefit.
Yep.
So they had to know something was going to happen.
Not only in council chambers, but when they're to and from, they have their own private security detail that the citizens of Minneapolis are paying for. Yeehaw. Amy, you want to go on to Alaska?
Yes, our next news story comes from Alaska. With the calling of the Alaska Senate race for Dan Sullivan, the Republicans have cemented at least 50 members in the Senate. With the two senators up for grabs in the Georgia runoff, there is a very good chance Mitch and the Republicans could hold a 52-48 majority. While this won't stop any of the Biden executive orders aimed at the Second Amendment, it will be enough to stop any legislation sent over from Nancy or her successor. The Democrat candidate opposing Kelly Loeffler, Raphael Warnock, has fought against allowing Georgians to be armed in church for the defense of the congregation. Warnock has repeatedly expressed his disdain for the principles expressed in Heller and MacDonald.
And it's heartbreaking to imagine that a man who has an armed security detail protecting him is telling the citizens of Georgia that they don't deserve the same protection he has.
I think,
We'll see how the
isn't
vote
Warnock
goes.
the candidate? Isn't he the candidate? Isn't he a pastor?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he is.
Paul,
So
do you
he's
want to
against,
take
he's against his congregation being armed in church.
being armed, right? Yep. Paul, did you want to take the SAF news?
I can certainly do that. Let me move show notes to where I can actually see them.
There is that.
Yeah, we've had multiple cases this week filed by the SAF. Maryland, they are going against the May issue, concealed carry there in Maryland. California, ban of the common use. Basically, it's the gun roster, and the you've got to take 2 off to put 1 on. Louisiana for young adults, 18 to 21. And the one I am really, really interested in seeing is Defense Distributed. They're suing the State Department and the new state of New Jersey over the First Amendment freedom to basically give out information. And I'm really, really pleased. We had one of the other shows I do is the Weekly Bullet. It's a 1-hour commentary and news show with an interview front loaded on it. And our first guest on Friday was Alan Gottlieb. And I am so pleased that he came on board. And one of the things he said was, well, look, we've filed 23 lawsuits so far this year. And as of the moment he was talking to us, that was accurate. Of course, a few hours later, it went up. But, yeah, I cannot be more proud to be a part of an organization that I am to be a part of the Second Amendment Foundation. You guys want to go ahead and jump in? Any part of this lawsuits you guys want to talk about?
I've lived under the California handgun roster. So if the manufacturer so much as changes a color of the screw used on the handle, they have to resubmit that firearm. And when they resubmit a firearm to California for approval, it has to have the impossible feature of firing pin marking with a serial number. That doesn't, now, by the way, all the government employees in California who carry, they are exempt from carrying firearms that meet these requirements. So it's really strange that citizens, that this law disarms peaceful citizens, but never restricts the state and the state employees who are guarding the legislators or politicians. It seems ripe for corruption, and I'm waiting for some judge to recognize it. Maybe now that the Ninth Circuit has had a change of complexion, thank you, President Trump, we'll start to see some of these laws overturned.
Yeah, and that's when... Well, Rob, you were with me on that first show. That was a question that I asked Alan Gottlieb. You know, with the change, with Amy Coney Barrett coming on the Supreme Court, is that part of your decision? And he said absolutely that it was. That he wants to get, while it's 6'3", maybe 5'4", definitely 5'4", maybe 6'3", that he wants to get as many cases up as he can.
Paul, there was, I think, one gun case that's already come up in front of the court. Now, the court takes one case out of 1,000. And I forget which one this was, and they passed and basically said, this was one of those requests of the court that said, look, before it works its way all the way up, we think it's sufficiently important that delays would seriously harm individuals. Would you consider taking it? And the Supreme Court said, no, go ahead, decide it first, and then we'll look at it. So Amy Coney Barrett's already cast votes that affect our right to keep and bear.
She has, and that the case you're thinking about is a Colorado case. I do not remember the name of the case myself either, but I do remember reading about it today.
It was the one where Boulder said no assault weapons, in quote, are allowed in Boulder. And then everybody said, yeah, right. No, you have to register them. Nobody did. So, and then it's in the courts now.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to our next one.
Dana in Florida?
Yes, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida has introduced some new enhancements to the state's Stand Your Ground statute. It would allow armed citizens to defend themselves against violent looters and rioters. It would enhance penalties for blocking traffic by making it a felony. Offer immunity to drivers who claim to have unintentionally killed or injured protesters blocking traffic, and withhold state funds from local governments that cut law enforcement budgets. I think the immunity for the drivers who claim to unintentionally kill and or injure protesters is really important, because so many, as we've seen, have gotten in some delicate situations by driving into the wrong place at the wrong time. So it's something that needs to be done.
I noticed that Michael Bloomberg, do we call him Mayor? Mayor Bloomberg put in, what was it, $100 million, much of it into Florida, and he was unable to flip Florida to turn it red or to turn it blue. I wonder here about the Florida governor's decision to address this law at this time. It may have been mere coincidence that it came up after the election. I'm not so sure. If we have someone in our listener audience who is more intimately familiar with the scheduling of Florida laws, I'd love to learn. Amy, what do you see?
Well, I'm just personally glad to see these enhancements being introduced. I think they provide a lot of clarity to the Stand Your Ground law, and it's a great example for other states to look at their individual castle doctrine laws and apply the same changes, hopefully.
Absolutely. I want to get in a couple of social media comments here real quick. Kevin Sona says, hey guys, sorry I'm late. I've been trying to take a social media break, but I can't. But I'm going to leave one of those words out. I can't miss PSP. And then he also came back and didn't one of the city council members who voted to defund the police call for help? And I got to be honest, guys. I've been trying to get some video issues settled here behind the scenes. Have we already talked about the Portland? I don't think we have the Portland city commissioner who was so rabidly trying to get the Portland Police Department defunded. And then all of a sudden, when she's taking an Uber ride and the Uber driver says, I've had enough of your stuff, I'm pulling over, I'm going to let you out at this gas station, she called 911 on the guy.
Yeah.
You mean the rules apply to you but not to me?
Well, yeah, because
see.
because I'm on the city council, I'm going to get your ass jacked up. Pardon my French.
Well, isn't it?
Right.
Isn't it shocking we want to defund the police unless I want them to harass someone? I was such a crappy customer that the guy who drove Uber, if you don't have to talk to the driver, if you just close your mouth, he'll take you anywhere you want to go. Evidently, this woman couldn't do that, and then now she wants to use the police to retaliate? Isn't that called official misconduct?
Well, and the whole thing, I really researched this one because it kind of torqued me off. The whole thing started from the driver. Uber's policy is if you've got a passenger in the vehicle and you in the vehicle, you keep a window rolled down because that lessens the spread of COVID if there's a lot of air circulation. Kind of makes sense. I don't know. But that's Uber's policy. She wanted the driver to roll the window up. He said, I'm sorry, it's policy. I have to leave the window down. And then she started haranguing him, and he said, I don't need the money that bad, and pulled off the freeway, pulled into a 24-hour convenience store, and said, you're invited to leave my car now. Your ride's over. And that's when she called 911 on him, because I'm not going to go into a convenience store. That's dangerous.
And you know what's amazing?
The
voters elected this prima donna.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's the elitist attitude.
And we've got Iron Horseman just commented, isn't that just like they want to use the police for their personal protection? Amen.
Some politicians are more equal than the rest of us. Should we go on to Philadelphia?
Absolutely.
Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, is only one small city, but it's a glaring example on the effects of home imprisonment during the recent COVID lockdown. Researchers studied hospital trauma admissions between 2015 and 2020. For 2020, they compared January to March 15 versus March 16 to May 30. So period to period. During that period of time, there was a 144% spike in gunshot victims. Those patients made up 23% of all the patients, compared to just 16% in 2013 and 13 to 14% in prior years. Social disruption resulting from the pandemic and statewide stay-at-home orders deeply affects the balance in urban injury management, close quote. That's from senior author Dr. Jose Pascula, an associate professor of surgery and trauma and surgery critical care. This is an article out of the UK Daily Mail. Who knew that government prescriptions to save our lives are costing lives?
Big shock there. The book Unintended Consequences comes to mind. It just... I hate to...
I'd seen...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I also saw another story out of Japan that next to no gun ownership there, but suicides have spiked tremendously because of the effects of the pandemic on people there. So it's either they're taking it out on each other or they're taking it out on themselves.
Paul, this may be a digression, so chop me if you want us to move on. We'll sue a doctor.
2.5 minutes.
We'll sue a doctor for medical malpractice. We now know that politicians who imposed quarantine restrictions caused more deaths from COVID-19. It turns out that the proper social policy was, if you're vulnerable, stay home, and that's all. Don't keep your kids home from school. We need them to go get sick and become immune. Turns out if you're under about 15, COVID's the sniffles on a weekend, you're done. The great news is you're no longer a vector to transmit it to grandma. And by putting us in isolation, they kept all of us vulnerable longer. If a doctor had such ill-advised medical suggestions, we'd sue them for malpractice, and instead we get political malpractice. Okay, Paul, there's 15 seconds you can have back before the break.
All right. This whole COVID thing, everybody is just up in arms. We've had in South Dakota, as of earlier today, the last time I checked, 644 deaths over 8 months. Let's see, 11 minus 3 is 8. Yeah, 8 months. And that we have a total population of about 700,000. So you've got basically in South Dakota, in the first 8 months of this thing, a 1 in 1,000 shot of dying from it. And guess what? I did not do the research this morning, but I do know that as of last week, when I did numbers, over 83% of South Dakota residents that died were over the age of 70.
Right. In other words, COVID is the common cold, and it's behaving like the common cold.
It's yes, it is. Well, not the common cold. I would say pneumonia.
Well, but by the way, what was the joke? Eventually, the bugs win.
Yes,
and that's what kills people in their 70s and 80s. Eventually, the common cold, flu, streptococcus, some common bug that has been around forever, and now you can't fight it off when you get that old, and that's how we die.
Absolutely. Before we jump to break, it's going to be a short show tonight because we're not going to be having a guest. The guest is not able to connect. So before we run to break, we've got a little extra time we can put on this segment. Do we want to talk about any other news?
I'd like to talk about this story from Oregon.
Go for it.
Oregon, like many states, is run by the politics of its large cities. Oregon is not as gun unfriendly as we might think. Not a single senator or single legislator, who walked out of the session last session because of the craziness they were proposing. None of the people who walked out lost in their election. 2 counties passed Second Amendment sanctuary ordinances. 2 seats have flipped to pro-Republicans, but not flipped against the incumbent. 2 races are very close, with the anti-gunners leading by very slim margins. 1 Republican incumbent lost, but it wasn't a big loss, as this particular Republican is not pro-2A. It's important to remember that in this election, when we say, oh yeah, Biden won, Democrats lost congressional seats. The more we look at these votes, and I've written about it on my podcast, this is a phenomenally dirty and corrupt election. I'm not sure who won.
Well, I'm sure of who won. I'm not sure who's going to take the office of president in January.
Excellent correction. Thank you. You know, you should write for a major news organization.
Hush your mouth. You know what? I'm because I have to write straight news and not opinion. I'm going to leave that one for you, Rob. That's your gift.
Okay, fine. That's right. I get to editorialize.
All right. Let's. Oh, and one other. I just caught this one. The Miss USA. Now, get this. Miss USA is owned by who again? Oh, that's right.
Trump.
Formerly owned by Trump.
Oh, okay. When did he
no longer owns it, but
when did he
had to sell it off.
Are you sure he just didn't put it in a trust like he did all his other businesses?
Could be.
But at least at one point, Miss USA was owned by Donald Trump. She's the first black Mississippi Alyssa Branch. She's 22. She's a marketing major from Ole Miss. She's visited President Trump at the White House during a round table on criminal justice reform. She sung the national anthem at a Trump rally. And she's also passionate about the Second Amendment. And her Instagram features videos and pictures of her shooting clays, including wearing a pageant crown. And oh my goodness, that stirred up in certain areas. That stirred up some hullabaloo online. Rob, I see you entering. Yeah.
Was she wearing the crown while she was doing shooting clays? Because if she did, I think I may be.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna go find that. That's awesome.
We got to put that on the page.
One more thing, because we do have a little time, we're going to be coming in on this episode, I believe, at about an hour instead of the usual 90 minutes. But one more thing I want to talk about, not in show notes, but definitely relatable to anybody who's watching or will be listening. What do you guys take of, there has been, I'm going to say, I don't want to say an exodus from Facebook and from YouTube, both of which we broadcast on, but there's certainly been a shift of people trying out other social media platforms. I myself, I've been on MeWe for a few years. Not many people were there until very recently. Parler, I've been on since July. There's one called Gab that I haven't tried yet. What do you guys think of the various social media platforms? Rob, I'm going to start with you. I know you've gone to at least one of them because I see you on MeWe all the time.
I'm on MeWe and Parler. I try and post there before I post to Facebook. I think I was effectively shadow banned on Facebook. I'd post one of my articles. Other people would post it. You know, I'm the author of it. They'd post it and it would get a reaction, and I post it. And I get one person who saw it, who gives me a like, and I'm going, yeah, no, Mark, you're not my favorite Zuckerberg. Anyway.
We've got some social media commentary coming, and I want to get it in. And everybody on Facebook, please be patient, because my software is not picking up your Facebook comments. I have to transfer them over to YouTube and then pick them up from YouTube. George Geller, talking about the Miss USA story, says, are we supposed to feel sorry for the Clays? And George Geller says that he's on both Parler and MeWe. Iron Horseman says he's on Gab, Parler, MeWe, and Rumble, and I really do want to check that Rumble out. I have the ability to simultaneously broadcast to up to 3 more platforms, and so I'm going to be checking out. Rumble. And finally, Julian, I can't pronounce your last name, Julian. Is Professor Rob schooling pupil Paul? Well, I'll say this. Rob is one of the smartest people I know. So, I mean, if he's going to be teaching lessons, I'm certainly going to listen.
Okay, Paul, what's she talking about? Where did that come from?
I don't know, but I thought it was, you know.
I think it's that we're both bald, right? That must be it. We look extinguished.
Yeah, there you go.
That was the EX.
Yeah, EXDIN, right.
All right, well, let's do this. I think we pretty much chewed the news segment up. We're almost a half an hour into it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to jump aside to break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about DGUs, and we'll get to that right after this. This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. All right, and we are back. This is the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Looks like we've got an all-Colorado DGU segment tonight. And, Rob, you're up first, man.
At 6:30 p.m., Greeley police were dispatched to a home on 6th Street. Bobby Destine, who owns the home, provided his home to people with disabilities, along with his cat, dog, and his studio equipment. Well, Destine is an entrepreneur, a singer, rapper. The intruder came to his house and asked Destine for money. Destin told him to leave, but the man continued to bang on the door at 6:30 in the evening. Look, Destin then opens the door to let him in, and the intruder ran inside, shoving Destin out of the way, which caused him to fall and hit the stairs. At this point, Destin pulled out a gun. The intruder tackled Destine and tried to take the gun from him. Destin told reporters that he was concerned for his life, as well as the lives of his other tenants, so he fired 2 shots at the violent intruder. The intruder was taken to a medical center, but his injuries did not appear to be life-threatening. Destin was also transported to the hospital, but he says he's okay, except for an injured elbow. I tried really hard to shoot the last second when I had no other choice after I was hurt. Close quote. Luckily, no one else was hurt but me and the intruder. My training came in handy. I'm praying that the intruder recovers fine. Police said that they have not yet made any arrests in the case as they continue to investigate. Anybody want to speculate why the police wouldn't make an arrest?
Yeah.
Was it a...
Go ahead, Amy.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't know if it was justified, if they, because it happened within his home. It's not clear whether the intruder was waiting. Because I'm trying to figure out in the story how when he let the other tenant in, that's when the intruder took the chance to run in and he tackled him. And it just, but if by the time someone's tackling you, you should already, in my opinion, you should already have your gun out. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, I think, for me.
Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hard time, Rob, because when I was looking at ways you first started reading the story, and you were saying, provides his home to people with disabilities along with his cat, dog. And I'm going, I haven't seen that since a very bad cartoon series.
Dilbert?
Is it kind of like a liger?
Dogbert, along with his cat, dog, and his studio equipment. Okay. That's a horrible situation. You're at 6:30 p.m. Somebody comes there. They're a stranger. No, I don't want to bother with you. And you open the door to let someone who lives there in, and now you've got a problem in your lap. Tough to manage.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if you keep the door shut, because of the madman standing outside the door, then what's going to happen with your tenant who's wanting to get in?
Right.
It
Right.
was catch-22 situation there.
I'm going to use the Rob Morse favorite answer. I would love to read the toxicology report on Mr. Strange Guy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right, I
Amy,
think
you're next up.
Yeah, we've kicked this one around. Amy, go ahead.
Well, to continue Colorado Week on the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast, a Colorado Springs homeowner was awakened in May by loud car noise, so she grabbed her phone and went outside to see what was going on. Video shows the car going up the road and then in reverse. Moments later, another camera captures the same white sedan parking in front of a neighbor's mailbox. The driver gets out of the car for a few moments, then gets back in. The homeowner asked the driver, "What are you doing?" She said she was delivering mail, and it's none of my, I can't say this on on air, business. It was 5 a.m., and the noise has been going on since 3:30 a.m. She threatened to call the police if the woman didn't leave the neighborhood. She walked to the back of the car to take a picture of the license plate. The driver jumped out, attacking the homeowner. The attacker knocked off the homeowner's glasses and her phone. The attacker, in her haste to attack the homeowner, didn't put her car in park, so it started to roll down a hill and struck two other vehicles. Lisa told the 911 call taker, "I was just assaulted by some girl out here in a car saying she was delivering mail. Now she hit another car." The noise woke up the next door neighbor, Larry. He came outside with a World War II handgun and saw Lisa, the homeowner, in the middle of the street asking for help. The driver had made it to her car, started the engine, and started to back out. Larry put the gun up to the window and told her to take the keys out of the ignition. Larry believed he had done good, but police had other thoughts. The senior citizen was ultimately charged with felony menacing. Lisa was charged with misdemeanor disorderly conduct. The driver was also charged with disorderly conduct and careless driving. There was a complication, though. Police were unaware of the video evidence at the time. The officers did the best they could with that information they had. Lieutenant Sokolik of the Colorado Springs Police Department stated that once someone is arrested and charged with the crime, News 5 made sure that both the DA's office and CSPD had access to the same video footage that they had obtained. 2 months after the original story on News 5, they learned that the DA's office had filed a motion to dismiss charges against Larry and Lisa. And while Larry is now free, the senior citizen has had the case put a financial strain on his wallet with having to pay thousands of dollars in attorney's fees and court costs. Lisa is also glad that the case is dismissed, but is upset that she has to pay a $65 fee to get the record of the arrest permanently sealed. Wow.
Rob, go, and then I'm going to back you up on what you're going to say.
$65 is cheap. A few $1,000 is cheap. Paul's going to tell us how much fun he had being falsely charged. Buy self-defense insurance if you have a gun.
Amen.
Paul, would you like to say anything about that?
Amen. With my incident a few years ago, I was out tens of thousands of dollars. And if I didn't have the help of great people spreading the word and doing fundraising to help pay for attorneys, and I had no chance against a legal system that is absolutely, totally, 100% rigged against the person being charged. If the state's attorney gets a hold of your case, compared to you, and unless you are Bill Gates, unless you are Elon Musk, they have an unlimited budget compared to what you can provide for attorneys. You have to have self-defense insurance. I personally recommend Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. They are amazing people to a person. I respect and trust every person there. and I endorse them. You hear their ads on the show every week, and you'll continue to, simply because I believe in what they do. There are others out there. Another good friend of the show, U.S. Law Shield. You'll hear from them from time to time. They help us out with AMCON. Another great organization if you do not want to go with ACLDN. But please, 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 if you own a gun, you've got to do a few things. Number one, you've got to be a member of an organization that will protect you if legal things come up. Number two, and I'm going to go back to politics a little bit here, and that is you've got to belong to the SAF. Yes, I'm an employee of the SAF. I said that before I was. You need to be a member of the NRA, and you need to be a member of one of your state or local gun rights groups. So I want to get to a couple social media comments here before we head off to break. Julian replied, "Sorry, my typing on the phone sucks. I was referring to the comment that Paul should write for a major news organization." Julian, you may not be aware. I actually do. I write for the Gun Mag website. I don't know if I'd call it major, but it's part of the Second Amendment Foundation. As part of my job for the Second Amendment Foundation, I do write a daily column for the Gun Mag. And George Geller has a comment about the DGU we were just discussing. He says, World War II handgun, a Nambu? So, got me.
Could be, don't know.
Could be a 1911. I mean, who knows, you know?
Oh, yeah.
What did you say, Dana?
I said it just didn't say. It just said World War II vintage handgun.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and do this. We are coming up on the end of the segment, and we got about 9 minutes to the top of the hour. We're going to go ahead and I think we're going to wrap the show up in under 60 minutes. So we're going to head to our last break. When we come back, we'll be talking about blog posts, and we'll shut the show down. So hang on, everybody. We'll be back with our last segment right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by Concealment Solutions. Jason Christensen makes the most comfortable inside the waistband holster on the market, bar none. The Black Mamba. Some of the other products offered are the Sidewinder outside the waistband holster and Python gun belts. Every product that Concealment Solutions makes has unsurpassed craftsmanship that shows in the fit and finish of the product. Visit concealmentsolutions.com to view all of the products available, and you can get 10% off your order when you enter the promo code POLITICS in the promo code box at checkout. That's concealmentsolutions.com.
Hey, and welcome back. This is the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Before we head, I got one more social media comment I'm trying to work in. So while I'm doing that, Rob, what's been up over at Slowfax, bud?
Okay. We've learned a lot. We've examined the record, and we found deliberate and targeted fraud in the 2020 elections. Democrat politicians planned on stealing this election from the voters. Look at the facts in hindsight. Suddenly, the Democrats' lack of concern for Biden's consistent low turnout at rallies, now that's easy to explain. The fix was in, and the fraudulent victory was widely anticipated. The Democrat establishment knew the vote was rigged. This time, the vote was rigged against the American people, just as surely as the outcome had been rigged against Senator Sanders in 2016. I'll speculate that it was probably rigged by the same people. This corruption is the face of socialism. We've seen illegitimate votes around the world, and now Democrats brought that corruption to the United States. I'm furious, and you, my fellow citizens, Republican or Democrat, should be furious too. My articles are up at Clash Daily, at Ammoland, and at my blog, slowfax.wordpress.com. John Richardson, my colleague, isn't here today, so please check his articles out at No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money.
All righty. The social media comment that I wanted to get in, and this just came in as we were on break. Charlie Chambers says, joined Armed Citizens Defense Network 3 years ago and donated to $450 to Second Amendment Foundation instead of buying a Ruger PC-9. Dude, I got to say, Charlie, I'm gonna nominate you for Fan of the Year. That's awesome.
Thank you, Charlie.
All right. Well, that does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. So for Amy, Dana, Gary, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, and Rob.
Until the next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, we are clear of recording. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the streams. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Join us next week, 5 p.m. Central Time on Monday. We'll do this whole thing again. And join us Wednesday night at, I believe, 6 p.m. Central for another episode of the Armed Society podcast. And join us at 12 p.m. No, 1 p.m. 1 p.m. Central Time on Friday for the week.